Okay, I think we're going to start. We might have some late arrivals at the gallery. I want to say hello to everyone. And this is such a beautiful day outside. And here I have you in the dark on one of the first lovely, lovely days of spring. So I feel incredibly appreciative and honored that you're all here today. We also have people online. So that has made a tech challenge, but we got through it, didn't we, Cass and Roxanne? So online, I have a photographic buddy, MZ, from Reno, and her husband, David. And Pam is here from online from Calgary, and Fiona's from Somerset, UK, and Leah, my daughter, from Vancouver, and Seth and Zoe, son and daughter-in-law in Mozambique. So lots of places, and then a whole gallery full of friends and family and supporters. And I can't tell you how much it means to me. So thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask the people online to make sure they're muted. And I will be leaving time for questions and comments at the end. And we will start with the online crew when we get to that point, and then bring in the people in the gallery. I will try really hard to make sure that whatever is said in the gallery, I paraphrase or at least try to let you know what's going on so that you're not missing out online. Okay. All right. Let's start. So through the looking glass is something I've been working on over the last year, and it's been a real journey. And I want to help take you on a bit of that journey. So I've often wondered from an artistic point of view, whether you're creating a piece of music or a piece of art or writing a book, where does this come from and what's the process? And I know that it's different for everybody, but I still am very, very curious about how that works. How does it come together? And I'm not sure of the answers to that. I'm even not sure of the answers for everything that goes on in my brain. But I am going to try to take you on that journey a bit with this body of work that's on the wall in the back. It wasn't a linear process by any means. It was a dance, a real dance that you moved 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and it was between technical issues, technical challenges, and conceptual thoughts and creativity. It's what happens inside the camera for me and beyond. And so I hope that I can make some of that more understandable for you. Okay. Hi, Tara, Monty. Hi. So the story began last year about this time. I had just taken an exhibition down off that wall called Urban Remnants. And hello. Hi, Monica. Sorry, I'm going to stop saying hello now and just welcome you. Know that you're welcome. So I just taken Urban Remnants down. That was an exhibit that was up on this wall in March of last year. And there were a couple of things happening in my life as well. I was about 4 weeks away from a hip replacement. My mobility was very limited, as some of my pickleball friends know very well. And also, there's sort of a creative rule of thumb that tells us that when you've just finished a big work of creativity, that you should expect a creative lull. So I wasn't expecting anything to be happening in the month after that exhibit came down. But I wanted to get out with my camera. So I limited myself in terms of where I would photograph to a block. It was really all I could manage with mobility. So I drove down to Spring Garden Road in Halifax and I chose a block and I just set out to see what I could see. I had nothing in mind. And that's when I started to notice the mannequins. And I think it wasn't that I was out looking for mannequins, they were there and they were in the block that I was using just to have some fun with my camera. So I took a couple of photos of them. And these, in fact, were the first two, but they didn't look anything like this when I got them home. They looked crappy when I got them home because of the photographic challenges that I had. I certainly at this point had no idea of any concept that was going to start pulling me in to this as a project. So I got these home and I looked at them and I thought, well, there's some issues here. So I kept going back to Spring Garden Road and gathering a bunch more images, and something was starting to tug. And I got in the car and drove around looking for more mannequins with heads in storefront windows, not inside malls, but in storefront windows. And I found a couple in historic properties and one on Gottingen at Vogue Tailoring, if you know that store. And as usual, I was drawn to the reflections that were happening in the windows of the stores. As my photographic buddies know, I love reflections. So I had a vague memory of an earlier mannequin that I had photographed at Duggar's, which is a high-end men's store on Spring Garden Road. Uh, not that it was a muse in any way that I know of, but I started digging through my photo archive to find it. And here it is. So I took this photo from Duggar's. It's pretty humorous in 2022. And it was simply a mannequin that they had set up in Duggar's window with very lovely, elegant clothes that you don't see well there. Put a zebra head on top of the mannequin, and there was this Pentax camera hanging around the neck of this mannequin. So I don't know, maybe there was a seed planted in this whole creative process way back when, but I did remember it. And you can see even in this one that the reflections in the window are quite prominent, reflecting off the storefront window. I think that's the central library, but I'm not sure which direction. So I was still asking myself, why the intrigue? Like, what is it about this? I was intrigued by the photographic challenges for sure. That was part of the dance. So in each of the photos, when you look in a storefront window, there are basically three layers of things that you can focus on. There's the storefront glass itself, which has all of these reflections coming back at you. And there's the mannequin inside the storefront. And then behind them, there is the store itself. So I was playing around with manual focus to try to figure out what I wanted to focus on in this image, trying out different apertures for depth of field, playing with metering to see what light I wanted coming into my camera, and trying very hard to avoid my own reflection as I stood in front of this glass. So I brought more home, and I was definitely being pulled into this for some reason. So, and the photographic challenges as became my playground equipment, and I just started having fun with them. And at first, I was disappointed and a little bit disillusioned because I wasn't getting what I wanted, but then I thought, no, this is fun. I'm going to take advantage of the challenges and just try to maximize them and see what happens. But why? Well, I had an anatomy prof once in med school who almost had to fail me out of anatomy because I am not a rote learner by any stretch of the imagination. I do not memorize well. He said to me, and I still remember, he said, Heather, you're going to do fine, but you need to know you are not a what and where person. You are a how and why person. And anyone who knows me well knows that that is absolutely the truth. I ask why all the time. Why, how does this work? Why does this happen? So it was typical of me to keep saying, what's the intrigue? What am I going after here? So my daughter-in-law, Wes, sent me this awesome picture of the mannequin crowd from, this is not my photo, from the bay closing down. And I thought, oh yeah, look at these guys and women. They're pretty crazy. And so I thought I need to start reading and figure out whether there's a conceptual basis for what I was feeling in terms of intrigue. So I searched the internet and I found some good information and ordered a book. I don't think you can see it, but it's up here if you're interested at all, from Routledge Press, called Mannequins in Museums. And it was a tiny book, academic based, that cost me 65 bucks and had one chapter that was relevant, but it was really relevant. So in the end, I think it was money well spent. So I'm going to take you on a very abbreviated history lesson on this beautiful sunny day, and I hope you can see how it relates to my exhibition. So mannequins in various forms have been around for over a century in the consumer business. So if you look back to Egyptians and First Nations and many other much older cultures than ours, there were mannequins of some sort. But here in our Western world, they've been around since the late 1800s. And in fact, before that, if you remember Madame Tussauds wax museums, has anybody been in those? Yes, I'm seeing some nods. So she and her company made wax mannequins whose sole purpose was to mimic reality as much as possible. They weren't meant for retail. They were certainly meant to bring in tourists and income, but they weren't meant to sell anything. So the Gems and Grab'em wax mannequins started emerging in a similar fashion to Tussauds in that they were very reality based. The whole point was to create a mannequin that looked somewhat like the people in the real world at that time, to put some clothes on and see what happened. And it took more than just the mannequins. It took the same, at the parallel time, the glass manufacturing became more refined so that you could see through it better. It also took the mass manufacturing world so that mannequins could be recreated to put in storefronts and be retail worthy. So that happened towards the late 19th century, and lighting as well. But what was really interesting is that the stage was set when this all came together, and mannequins started emerging as fashion influencers. And catalogs started photographing them and using them in the catalogs at the same time. So there was a great evolution of mannequin style. Pierre Iman's wax mannequins for retail purposes that started coming out of France in the 1920s. And then the schloppy became the standard that when you look at most mannequins that we see, they're coming out of a company in Italy called Schlappi. But look at these bodies, like look at the arms on that one standing in the gold dress. They are so unreal. So they became over that century increasingly long, increasingly sinuous, with more subtle or almost no facial features. They were a lithe silhouette, and they started speaking about what was becoming the body politic in our day. Certain bodies were celebrated and others were marginalized. And there was a mirroring that started happening with runway models as well. If you think of the typical body and demeanor of a runway model, it's she or he, it's not unlike what you're seeing in the mannequins. But so many body types and cultures were silenced through this whole emergence. So diversity, there was none. So there was no, in the mannequin world, there was no diversity in body shape, body size, body color, skin color, facial features, ethnicity, abilities, like zero. It was all these white, long, live mannequins. So the question is today, is there any hope in that diversity? And the answer, maybe. So when I was in Mozambique in December visiting my family, all of us were there, I ran across this mannequin in a store in the capital city of Mozambique. But if you look at it, it is a black mannequin in color, but it is a schloppy mannequin with body features that are still that long, sinuous look, spray painted black and put into a bikini. So I think that's more tokenism than change. And then I can't remember who sent it to me. If they're here, let me know. Somebody sent me a picture of the cover of Diversity magazine, or no, Ability magazine, I'm sorry. And they were talking in this magazine about diversity in mannequins of various abilities. So J.C. Penney took this on very recently. And you can see there's a mannequin in the wheelchair. There's a mannequin with prosthetic legs, a mannequin that's pregnant, I think, a very short mannequin with a very different body shape, and another certainly not long and sinuous, but they're all white. So it's just really interesting. I'm hoping there is a tipping of change. We'll see. So that little history lesson is really just to illustrate how we've come into the concept of storefront mannequins as a creation of a fantasy. Window dressing, we have some window dressers here who worked in that profession for a while. But their goal is really to create that fantasy for window shopping. Window shopping way back in the early 1900s, when all of that was coming together, really became a leisure activity for the first time, where you just sort of wander around window shopping. And the fantasy was to create a retail lure, something to draw you in. And the displays were very artistic. And in some instances, the tableaus could be almost considered art installations in their own selves. So in my images, I wanted to create the experience of window shopping, maximizing the use of that silhouette and portraying the different moods and fantasies that I was seeing when I was out with my camera paying attention to mannequins now. So I started playing with editing the images into an impressionist take. Mine are not realistic, but they're an impressionist take on that experience of interacting with that fantasy. So if you look back to a previous slide that talked about the photographic challenges, the first thing was, what was I going to do with my post-processing to bring some of that forward? So this one, I think, is a good example of what happens with the layers. So this is a single shutter release. I clicked once. But in this image, you can see the layers quite clearly. The reflection of the tree in the storefront window is very dominant here. The divider that's behind the mannequin is actually the divider between where the mannequin stands and the store itself. And you can see it's cutting through the head of that mannequin. That's on purpose. And I think that you can see from here some of the architectural reflections in the mannequin as well. So there's lots of layers there, and I tried to pick out the ones that I thought provided the mannequin context and really maximize them. And that's what I've done. You will see in this one compared to the next one that you can't see into the store very well in this one. But in this one, the store interior becomes much more visible. The dresses hanging, the shelving, it's all much more visible, but the mannequin is much more transparent, almost, not quite, but almost incidental, very silhouetted with the exterior reflected less than the previous one, aside from the sidewalk and the road, which seems to create texture in the bottom of the image, but is in fact reflection. So in this one, again, in this situation, you've got almost no interior. I did not bring that into play much at all. The mannequin is only hinted at. There's lots of reflections. So everything that you're seeing within and behind the mannequin is outside of the store, except for that window frame, it's to the third to the left. It looks like a solid object. The window was in fact a corner window, two pieces of glass coming together. So in this situation, the mannequin almost moves out of the storefront in my impressionist take and into the exterior, and the mannequin is almost incidental. So the lighting was horrible in all of these situations. You had varying light outside, creating various amounts of reflections on the storefront. The light that shines down on the mannequins within their little enclosure is almost uniformly harsh, and it's shining on almost uniformly eggheads of plastic. So there's a lot of glare on the windows and on the mannequins. And so in this situation, it was very harsh. And what I did here was use a little bit of camera movement to soften that glare and bring the shadows deeper into her dress and through her hat, so that the glare was less visible and you could see the shape of the mannequin. Yeah. This one I treated very differently. So I wanted to portray that sense of silhouette in a number of my images. So this one, this one was a white egghead that I inverted so that the glare was gone off of that sheen, and turned it into almost a two-dimensional object. You can see the sewing machines in the window and the sense of fabric, but also some things from outside are reflected in there. And, this one I laughed at myself with because when I inverted the mannequin, that's a technical thing that you can do, it ended up with this white haloing around its exterior. And white haloing is a no-no in photography. It's one of those thou shalt not have haloing. And yet this haloing seemed to be important to this images. So I said, crap, it's staying in. So, and I maximized it instead. So this is from Historic Properties, in case you're wondering. And this one, the opaque silhouette is very opaque. You can't see through this mannequin, and I did that on purpose, even though there's so many reflections here. You could see a car going by. It looks like it's going behind the silhouette, but it's not. And then there's all kinds of things within the store that you can see. Shiny surfaces. So this mannequin, who I love, she's just strutting her stuff there, but she has this metallic sheen in the jacket that she has on, and that sheen was just exaggerated within the window and the lighting shining on it. So I was able to soften it a bit, but I actually wanted to grab that because it seemed to me part of what the retail lure was supposed to be. And more shiny surfaces. Sorry, I'm just going to grab a sip of water. So this mannequin from Holt Renfrew in Montreal, I got these few in the fall last year. The light is coming from her top left, and it's creating incredibly strong shadows on her face and neck and nose. And you can see that it makes these deep hollows in her facial features that she has. Some of the mannequins have none. It almost mirrors the contrast between the lace of her blouse and her skin, in air quotes. So again, I was playing with what was there and trying to figure out, what did I want to maximize? What did I want to show? So I think you might have noticed as we've come through this that there are many different personalities that have been created by the window dressers in this whole show. So there are manufactured moods, and it's part of the retail lure. So if you look at the one on the top, she looks very, and you may see something different than I do, but I'm going to tell you what I see. She looks contemplative to me. She's just sort of gazing out of the window and watching the world go by, calm. Whereas the three on the bottom are ready for the nightlife. They've got the sexy, glittery, skin showing dresses on, and the lighting is very different, and the context is different, with a lot of almost neon lighting reflecting off surfaces. So really this is due to the artistry of the window designers and the environment that changes the mood pretty considerably. Again, here's I'm going to strut right out of the window mannequin on the top, who's got a very forceful personality in my view, compared to this woman in this female mannequin in the bottom, who seems to be portraying a very business posture. I'm going to take my blazer that's over my arm and head into the business meeting. But it's all done by stylized artistry. And the moods contribute to that fantasy that is there. So what about this title, Through the Looking Glass? Ron and I have a a history about this. So Ron over there against the black window coverings is our graphic designer and also a real mentor for me. And when he asked me what I wanted to name this show, I said storefront influencers, because they're just like the online influencers, but they're in the storefront. And he said, that's boring. And I thought, oh, okay, well, and he said, I think you should call it Through the Looking Glass. And I thought, well, that's pretty trite. I don't think that's a good idea. But the more I thought about it, doggone it, he was right. And I had to tell him that again. So um, it talks to so many things about this exhibit. So you think about Alice in Wonderland going through, into the fantasy world of Wonderland through the looking glass, or the mirror on the wall, that looking glass that we are constantly measuring ourselves with. The complexities of that storefront glass and what it shows and doesn't show, and also just that fantastical world that resides in that space. So Ron, you were right. But whose fantasy is it? So that's such a complex concept. So fantasies in the eye of the beholder. And I have to ask you these questions. Do mannequins influence you? Do they creep you out? There's lots of people that are very creeped out by mannequins. I'm not one of them, but you might be. Do they leave you feeling dissatisfied with your own world or happy that you're not part of theirs? So, that whole sense of fantasy is very complex, and pleasing or displeasing or somewhere in between or who cares can be responses that happen. So I'm still thinking about it, and I don't know the answers. I've tried to share with you some of the process that I went through, the dance, if you will, between that technical challenge and the conceptual thoughts that I was having as I got deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole of mannequins. But I'm still not sure about this whole influence. So that's all I have to say about my exhibit. I would like to thank some people before we get into comments and questions. I'm just going to put this water down. So many people that supported me through this right from the beginning, where, I wasn't feeling like I had anything worthy of considering. So thanks to family and friends who really supported me through that. And then thank you to the gallery, my gallery community, who I could talk to about these mannequins and who would give me feedback or look at me like I was a crazy woman. One of the two, or argue with me. And thank you as well to the installation team who helped hang this show and made it come to life. Roxanne up on the ladder making my lettering perfectly straight with her laser. And then for the tech run, which was on Thursday, Lorraine happened to be in, and she brought her son over, who brought a connection and for my computer, and he was very, very, very helpful. And two friends who are here from Kitchener-Waterloo who flew all the way out to be with me. Thanks, Mark and Connie. And to everybody who's online, it means the world. It means the world to me. So I'm going to open this up to questions, and I'm going to open it first to the people who are online. So you can make a choice, unmute yourself, jump in with questions, whatever works for you. Oh, there's something in the chat. I'll check that first, if I can. Oh, so happy to be here with you today, Heather. Me too. I'm happy you're here too, MZ. Okay, Pam, you've got your hand up.
Yes. So first off, Heather, I just wanted to congratulate you. I think fabulous, fabulous show and a really great talk. Certainly gives me a lot of food for thought. But there was just a couple of things that came up while you were talking that I hadn't thought about before, and I just thought I would mention them. So I'm not sure this is really a question, but it's interesting. I had forgotten about the timing when you started your work on this and with your limited mobility, waiting for your hip replacement. And just as I looked at the subjects, it occurred to me that they're really mirroring your limited mobility, your restricted
Oh,
mobility. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that might, again, give some thought as to why this perhaps intrigued you a bit in the beginning. And then I just really, for me, I really love the way that you embrace the imperfections of the process. That, as you said, you're dealing with a lot of different planes of focus, a lot of different lighting reflections. And yet, rather than trying to get around that or get rid of that, you actually really started embracing it. And I think that's what makes this just so interesting and intriguing. And that certainly, for me, makes this a very multidimensional type of a body of work. So I really appreciate that as well.
thanks so much, Pam. And that's a very interesting idea that their immobility mirrored mine. That hadn't even crossed my mind. Thank you. Anyone? Fiona?
Hi. Yeah, fabulous talk, Heather.
Thank
I get all emotional.
you.
Um, do you see yourself as continuing with this project, or do you see it as an entirety in itself? And if you do see yourself as continuing with the project, have you got any idea in which direction you take it?
The answer is at this point, no. I don't see myself continuing with it, but sometimes, I mean, these mannequins sort of jumped out and grabbed me, not the other way around at the start. So who knows where that will go. As you know, you've sent me photos of art installations that involve mannequins. So there's photography involving mannequins in all sorts of ways. So Fiona, thanks for your support, but I don't have an answer to that yet.
We'll wait and see.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else online? Shall I take that as a no? Okay, then I'm going to ask you, excuse me, online to mute, and I'm going to take questions from the gallery, comments, and I will try to paraphrase them to you because I think it'll be hard for you to hear them. Can we turn on a couple of lights, Cass, or one? Thank you. Okay. Hi. Questions, Anne? Okay.
I heard you, I understood you, but I wonder what the difference is between the technicality in this particular project and the last one.
So that's a good question. So I don't know how many, well, several of you saw my last exhibition. And my last exhibition, I really considered to be quite a bit of realism. So there wasn't the technical challenges. These were street art on the wall. Yes, there were times that I had to technically move garbage bins out of the way to get the photo that I wanted, but there wasn't the glare and the layering and the shiny surfaces. So that was very different for this one. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Seems to me that the technicalities that you faced in this particular session were quite different.
Yes.
Very different.
Yes. So for those online, Anne's just asking to contrast and compare the technicalities involved with my urban remnants exhibition and this one, and she thinks they were very different. I agree. Yes, Ron?
Noticed that the people are looking at the display, quite a few people are trying to peek behind. Can you explain how they're actually how?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I didn't mention that. So when it came time to print these, and so the question is, Ron's noticed people coming in and almost trying to look behind the images to see how they're hung. So I didn't mention they are printed on matte metal. And that was a conscious decision. I didn't think these belonged on paper and in a frame. They were too contemporary. I wanted them to be quite stark and on their own, and to try as best I could to create a street scene where you would be walking past windows and seeing the mannequins as you're walking by. So they are printed on metal, and I used a company in Toronto called Poster Jack, who did a fabulous job. And behind them are almost scaffolding of metal with a hanging mechanism on them. Is that what you were looking for, Ron?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I know you know about it because you were hanging. Yeah. I'm sorry. No, they're very light. They're very light. Yeah. And you can put your hands all over them. Well, I wouldn't ask you to, but you can. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so whether you keep doing this work or not, I think all of us will never look at a mannequin and say, it's interesting because you talk about like personalities, and I've never actually like looked at my mannequin, like looked at a mannequin and thought, oh, I don't have a mannequin. It sounded like I did for a second, but you talked about like personalities. And I was like, I've never thought about that when I look at a mannequin. So is there one particular one that like drew you in? I mean, obviously the zebra head was very interesting. So like along your journey, was there one that really drew you in?
Yeah, so the question for those online is never having thought about mannequins as having personality, and she'll never look at mannequins again. And I want to say thank you for that, because in my, I'll answer your question, but in my artwork, if I can send people away thoughtfully and they go out and look at a mannequin and think, oh yeah, that's something I hadn't thought about, then this whole show has been a success. So thank you. So my favorite one varies for different reasons. So I love the strutting your stuff mannequin at the end with the shiny blazer. She just, even, standing on the street photographing her, she just looked like she was ready to take on the world. And I really liked that. From the technical point of view, my favorite is the guy with the tree in his head. So I think it's probably my medical background, but it looks like, to me, it looks like neurons and dendrites, and maybe that's what was going on in my brain during this. I don't know. Yes, Mark?
I'm not sure if I think this is more a comment.
Okay.
I think I shared with you when I first came in and started walking down and looking at them, I suddenly had this very strong feeling that I didn't know if I was viewing the picture or if the photo was viewing me. And as you spoke, it dawned on me that what you did as part of your process is you took the field of focus that we normally cognitively filter out so that we look at either the reflection or the mannequin or what's inside the store. And you brought them all into interplay with one another, which in a real sense questions each one of us about the assumptions that we bring with the unbiased filters that don't allow us to see the reflections because we're looking at the mannequin, or don't allow us to see mannequin because we're looking at what's inside the store. So you really, I think it is the mannequins looking at us and asking, what do you see?
Yeah.
And thank you for that. That was a brilliant piece of work.
Oh, thanks, Mark. So Mark is saying a comment that as he first came in to see the exhibit, he felt like not only was he looking at the mannequins, but the mannequins were looking at him and questioning him in his role, maybe. And that the other piece that you said, Mark, that photographers talk about a lot, in fact. So you talked about how all of these layers become visible after I played with them. And photographers will tell you that the camera sees things that we don't see. And I think that's really, really true in many ways. It either sees it because it's a magnified close-up like Laszlo's images, that when we would walk by, we wouldn't see that detail, or in my case, reflections are just like me, like a dog with a squirrel. So I look for them now. But thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, Mary.
I'm curious about the actual taking of the photograph. Did you interact with any of the store owners? Did people come out and say, what were you doing? Or you know?
Old ladies with cameras get away with a whole lot. We do. It's almost weapons, you know? So no, the answer is no. So the question was, did anybody in the store come out and question what I was doing? And I think the only time that happened, Alan, do you remember you and I went for coffee and we were walking down Barrington? And there was a store on Barrington that had mannequins outside the store lined up. Pardon me? Yes, the old viewpoints. Yes, that's right. And I was taking a few pictures and we started walking away and the owner came out. He didn't say anything to us, but he followed us as we walked away. And I think that if we had stayed and continued, we would have been questioned. But no, I had absolutely no discussion with them. So in Nova Scotia, there is a video you can watch from Dal Legal Aid about what we are allowed to take photos of and not allowed to take photos of. So in public spaces, we can photograph anything we want. I was standing in a public space taking photos of things in private spaces. So I felt a little bit of tension there and wondering whether I was crossing the line. I kind of like crossing lines, but I did ask that question, Mary, and I did not get any feedback. However, I made a conscious decision that the poster girl mannequin was from Montreal. Wonder why I did that. So people have said you should take these back and show them to the store owners. And I thought, maybe. Albert.
Yeah, wondering, is your aim in this to challenge the viewer's perception of reality?
That's a big question. So the question from Albert is my aim in this exhibition to have the viewer question reality? Did I get that right? So to me, this is a long philosophical discussion, but reality is in the eye of the beholder. So this is an impressionist exhibition. This is not meant to be a realistic photo of a mannequin. It is my understanding of the whole fantasy that's being created. So my aim in this is to make you think about mannequins and the body politic and their place in that whole cultural take on on fashion and the body politic. So I don't know that even fashion and the body politic is real. It's a fantasy. Let's go to coffee. We could talk about that more. How's that?
And wondering, another question. To follow up, I didn't realize people were afraid of mannequins.
Mhm.
Do you know the movie The Set from Shorty?
Yes,
Did you think about that at all?
I didn't. That's a long time ago. Everett's wondering about people who feel uncomfortable with mannequins. How many here have a feeling of discomfort with mannequins? Sometimes, okay. I have a daughter who can, yes. So it's interesting because maybe most of the people that have discomfort with mannequins aren't here. So for good reason. But I learned a new artistic term, Avert, that I hadn't known before. I have a slide that's hidden on it if anybody's interested, but it's called uncanny valley. And there's a whole science on this. And the notion is that psychologically, the closer a non-human but humanoid form gets to real, the more people are likely to be uncomfortable with it. So I don't know if you remember my exhibition when you and I were first new members, and I had the clowns, and I sent those off to a friend in Ontario, and she said, "Oh my God, Heather, why are you sending me clowns?" And the same, she had the same response to the mannequins. So there are definitely people there who are very uncomfortable with that. Dolls, mannequins, clowns, although they're animate, I would argue. Yeah. Graham, I think I saw your hand.
Did the idea of artificial intelligence come up in your head when you were thinking? I mean, it seems to overlap in mine. They're artificial, obviously. We project things onto them. And you almost have a dialogue the same way that you can chatbot. So you can get to think the chatbot is real, or you get to think mannequin like you. Did that come up in your head?
It came up in conversations. So I didn't use any AI in creation of these, and I think you know that. But for instance, the mannequin that's strutting out of the storefront, Ben, was it you that suggested it looked a bit like a cyborg? Somebody did. That sci-fi, is this, and I wrote a question on my narrative card of whether these mannequins are aliens or are they, so I think that's there. And Christine, a friend who I know had to leave early, she even questioned whether they talk to each other when nobody's looking in the window. So there is that creepy, maybe creepy or maybe not, but that otherworldliness. And how many kids are convinced that the dolls on their bed talk to each other when you're not looking? Lots of them, right? Yeah, there you go, Toy Story. Lori.
Right down there. Sort of.
Mark.
Alan.
Or Alan? Oh, Mark.
Oh, Mark.
Yes.
Anyway, so I was thinking about the spectrum of human sight, like what we see. And I already have been thinking, well, these remind me a bit of X-ray vision or heat sensing vision. And so I was thinking about ultraviolet light and the kind of vision, not vision, but sensing that say snakes up.
Okay.
And so there was whoever down there was mentioning, and then you reiterated that the camera sees more than we see. So I think that the spectrum has been broadened when I look at these.
Thank you. So Lori's comment was that it may also have overlays with what ultraviolet light sees, what X-ray vision sees, this whole notion of the camera seeing more than the human eye does. And heat sensing. Thanks, Lori. Yeah. Lisa.
My favorite, the man in the blue jacket.
Okay.
I love reflection. But from this angle, it almost looks like he's wearing a scarf with the window panes around his neck. And I wonder if that was sort of intentional or if it's just the reflection. There's no, you don't see the window panes in the middle on the shirt. You just see it as though it's hanging scarf hanging around his neck from the head.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I was looking up at his collars, but that's not what you're thinking about. You're thinking about this down here. And those are, and so from straight on here, what I see, but I may be seeing it because I know they're there and I'm so familiar. It was window panes that are reflected. So no, I didn't see that scarf. I certainly saw the scarf over the briefcase in the corner, but that's very interesting. And an artist does become blind after a while to the images, and it's so wonderful to have new eyes looking at them and suggesting things that I either never saw or have become too familiar to see. So thank you. Lisa's wondering, the man with the tree through his head, on his blazer on either side of, like hanging over his pecs, are what might look like a scarf. And to me, I'm seeing the windows that are reflected from the building behind, but yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Lorraine.
Things you could photograph and things you couldn't. Where were you getting that from?
Sorry, say this again, Lorraine.
You mentioned that there was some place that you had a reference from. What was that?
So it's a legal YouTube video. I'll send you the link, but it was made by a lawyer at Dell. And it must have been in answer to questions that he was receiving about photography. And where did he? No, local, Dalhousie. Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Because I did wonder why felt that the storefront was private.
Well, it's the glasses, not, again, questions for those online about what's private, what's public, and what can you photograph. So the glass, you know, when you get right down to it, Lorraine, there are many people who photograph architecture, and architecture is somebody else's art. And it might be a building that's owned privately, but we photograph them. And so the same with the mannequins. I know that people have told me that if I had tried to photograph in a store rather than from the sidewalk or in a mall, okay, I did photograph that one in Mozambique. You get away with iPhones a lot more than big SLRs. But in that's a private space is how I understand it. But
there's a fairly famous, recent court case where people living in a high-rise apartment were photographed by someone in another high-rise apartment. And the courts found in favor of the person photographing because the people in their apartment have left the curtains open.
What? Okay, I'll have to close my curtains. So the conversation has to do with a court case that Lorraine is talking about, that people were photographing from one apartment building into the windows of an adjacent apartment building, and the people being photographed took them to court, but the court found in favor of the photographer because the people in the adjacent building left their curtains open. I have no comment. Yeah. Yes, Steve.
Comment question, I guess, really, but was there any consideration, like, this is a reflection of humanity and how complicated we are and how many layers there are, and maybe, you know, we only see so much. There's a lot more out there, and that's what your eye is catching.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Now, I don't know that I actually broadened it in the same way you've articulated this, that I was thinking about humanity in general, but certainly thinking about the body politic in general. And, you know, I received photographs from photography friends and travelers from all over the world this year because they knew I was interested. And that body politic is there everywhere, regardless of culture. And it's the Western body politic. I think that's changing in some ways. For instance, Jane Oram, who many of you know and is a member of our gallery, was traveling in Southeast Asia, and she was sending me photos of mannequins there. Some of them were headless with very almost, I would call them East Indian dresses on. I probably have that wrong, but they were headless, but the arms were still Caucasian arms. And this one that I showed you from Mozambique, you know, really, this is not a representation of a Mozambican African body. It's not. So there are all kinds of general questions that have to do with humanity, for sure.
You talked about body politic, that you were referring like to the Twiggy revolution, like how androgynous
Was part of it. And it continues today in different stages, not just for women, for men too. In fact, I understand that in online influencers, and I definitely thought about them in this exhibit, you know, whether the storefront mannequins are going to be fading away and the online influencers will be put into the storefronts to yak at us about things. But the male body politic has really come to the forefront in all kinds of ways: skincare, dress, hair, everything. Yeah, so it continues. It's maybe a different flavor, but it's there. Yeah. Yeah. Mary.
I think your exhibition is a wonderful example when you have a very restricted ability or any restrictions and how you can actually find to create something in what would seemingly be barren
ground.
Yeah. So just thinking about your artistic process, in this case, you came up with a solution and something wonderful. But in general, do you sort of have an idea of what you're going to do, or do you just sort of take inspiration as you walk around? And so in general, your process?
I don't head out with an intention, almost never. So when I go out with my camera, I'm just looking to see what I find. Freeman Patterson, who many of you know, a renowned New Brunswick photographer who is, I consider, a mentor. He always says that you should not be labeling things. Look at things in terms of light and form and line and color. Now, in this case, I looked at mannequins and they were a label. But when I go out in general, I'm looking for line and form and light. And as you know, I love abstract photography. So sometimes that's all there is that I'm photographing. So I rarely go out saying to myself, I'm going to go and photograph windows. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Hi, Monty. Can see you. Oh, yeah. Hi, Violet. I'm talking to the kids back there. I don't know your name, or I'd say hi to you too. It's okay. That's all right. Anything else? We can certainly break, and I will be glad to hang. Oh, sorry, Steve.
Found your next inspiration?
No. Well, yes and no. So I've become very intrigued with the post-camera process that looks at the code of an image and the actual code of an image and how it creates the image and what happens when you move things around. And of course, I'm never going at, for me personally, I go at things conceptually as much as I do the image. It has to be part of an idea. So I'm finding that as I'm working on these, and there will be an exhibit of them in the fall, I'll let you know when. It's falling into two bodies of work. One is what looks to me like a storyboard that is used in filmmaking, etc., with little vignettes of what was the original image in various shapes and sizes. And again, you see more that way than you do if you're just looking at the full image. And the other one, the body that it falls into, is a liminal space. So do you know what I mean by that, Steve? Liminal. So think of threshold. It's like it's almost, the glass could be considered a threshold between here and there. So it falls into this sort of abstract, where am I question. So that's where I am right now, but I also want to get back out with my camera.
Seems like perhaps maybe your mind reflects your art.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. So
It's very broad.
Steve says that my mind reflects my art. Steve is one of my pickleball buddies. I don't know, Steve, what goes. I wonder what goes on in my mind. I don't think it's clear. It might be why I like that guy with the tree in his head. So yeah.
Heather, back to medicine. Louis Pasteur's one of the famous quotes was, "Chance favors the prepared mind."
Oh, I like that. So Connie says that Louis Pasteur in health sciences says that chance favors the prepared mind. I'm going to put that up somewhere. I like that because we use chance all the time. I've talked to Freeman Patterson about this a lot. He uses intentional camera movement a lot in his imagery. And he says, you can't be fully intentional when you do this because you're waving this camera around. And sometimes he literally does wave it around and comes back to the house with 50 images, of which 2 say something to him. So that is chance. It's not saying I'm going to swerve this in an arc of whatever angle. It's chance. But isn't it fun?
Heather, can you repeat that quote, please?
Yeah, I'll try, MZ. So it's from Louis Pasteur, and it's chance favors the prepared mind.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Oh, you've been such a receptive crowd. Thank you so much. And go out and don't look at mannequins the same way anymore.